Welcome to July's episode of Design Dialogues. Today we're talking about blurring the threshold. So I have a very special guest with me who I'm very happy to have on today. Before I let him introduce himself, just going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Ashley Smith, and I'm the Director of Architect and Designer Partnerships for Urban Bonfire and Kalamazoo. We are two outdoor kitchen design manufacturing companies. I've been in the outdoor kitchen world specifically for 10 years and was an interior designer previous to that. So, big part of my job is just communicating, interacting, engaging with the design community. And a big part of how I do that is through this series, Design Dialogues, where I bring on different experts so we can talk about everything that there is to know about outdoor design, but also kind of how that indoor design can affect outdoor trends. And so today, for Blurring the Threshold, I have Dan here to speak with me. So, Dan and I were lucky enough to meet just under a year ago, I guess, for the first time in our Chicago office. He came to one of our experiences, and I've been lucky enough to run into him in the wild a couple of times since. So I'm excited to have this presentation with him today. And Dan, I'll let you just tell us about yourself a little bit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Houchard, and I'm a landscape designer, and I'm based here in Dallas, Texas, kind of central to the country, which works out great. But I'm doing projects right now, currently in California, Louisiana, Virginia, Florida, Rhode Island, New York, and we just finished a big bucket list project in Cambridge, England, which was just so much fun for a landscape designer to jump into. We just photographed it. So was just over there a few weeks ago to do that. So anyway, I do what I love every day. It doesn't feel like work, and and I'm happy to be here today to talk to all of you.
Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. I think we're really lucky that we work in a field where genuinely people seem to actually love what they do, and we're all looking to learn. And so that's why I'm so happy to be hosting these sessions, but I also feel like I come away from every single one learning something. And I think that's a very important part of design. You never stop learning. And so I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot today just based on the slides that I've looked through so far. So, as I mentioned, today's topic is blurring the threshold. And so really what that means is that indoor outdoor kind of transition and how important that is and how that can play such a big impact in the overall effectiveness of the design. So we're going to break it down into 5 different parts. We're going to talk about beyond the aesthetics because as much as everything we do is so aesthetic focused, there also is a wellness aspect to it. And we want our clients to be happy, we want them to be healthy, and we want them to be able to enjoy their homes for long, long, long periods of time. Invisible thresholds, this is obviously a big part of indoor outdoor design. Core design pillars and bringing that indoor focus outside. Bridging the gap, took the mind the gap expression. And then Four Seasons performance. So if you are in a climate like mine, we have vast differences between the needs of an outdoor space in the summer versus the winter. And then there's everything in between, right? So it's just understanding what the priorities are and how you can account for those. So we'll start off with beyond the aesthetics. And so the main focus here is really mental wellness, physical wellness, just wellness in general. And a big topic that has come up in design is obviously biophilic design. I'm sure a lot of people on the call have probably heard this before. Um, and essentially, what we're looking to do, like the definition of biophilic design for anybody who's not super familiar with it, it's essentially a framework that integrates nature and natural elements into built spaces. So no matter what kind of built environment you are in, you want it to feel like a natural environment. And with that, there comes all kinds of positive health effects, mentally, physically, stress reduction. Like there's so many advantages to biophilic design and being immersed in nature. And so this indoor outdoor living obviously plays a huge part in that. Something that I also learned was that I attended another webinar, I think it was Green Builder Media, if I'm not mistaken. They went through this whole topic of how wellness means different things to different people and different generations. And so what wellness might mean to you might be something that's different to your client. So make sure that you understand what it means to your client so you're prioritizing that particular kind of wellness. Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot. What does wellness mean to you? Like, what is your priority, or what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think wellness?
I mean, to me, it's a space. It's actually two things. It's the way a space makes me feel, right? I think
Mhm.
we talk a lot in my design forum group about, we're like, oh, we're not changing the world here. And I'm kind of like, well, we kind of are, right? We're changing someone's individual world because if you get that feeling like you get when you go on vacation, when you step into your home, when you step into your garden, that can be life changing, right? And I think that's such a gift. The best part of my job is years later, I will get a picture from a client, just on their phone of them using the space and, just saying, we love this every day. This has changed the way we entertain. And so I think that sort of mental wellness on sort of a looser level, but also for me, it's having things almost like behind the scenes, actually. Like, so it's like we've designed it to be very functional, even though it may not look like it. It looks like a natural space, but it also functions very well for a family. And I think that can, it's about taking the frustration out, right? Whichever that may
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you said like people want to have that kind of oasis or like feel like they're on vacation at home because that was obviously a big shift. I'm going to say 6 years ago. During the pandemic, people weren't able to go on vacation. And so they were creating those spaces. And I think it's been really interesting to see how that has stayed. Like that's been one thing that has absolutely stayed and remained a priority for people as they're building
Yes.
new homes or as they're renovating their existing spaces. It's creating this place where they love to be and where they want to be able to do everything there. And I do think like loving where you live to me, like I don't think there's anything better than that. Like that is such a wellness factor to me. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So happy to see that. So again, it's obviously there's a huge aesthetic advantage to having this indoor outdoor living and having all of this cohesive design and everything, but it doesn't just stop there. It really goes so much further. And I think you really need to consider that when you're designing for your clients because again, you want them to live these really happy, healthy lives in these really beautiful spaces that you've helped them develop and made specifically for them and their needs. I think that's always a key factor as well. Again, beyond the aesthetics, you're expanding the footprint of the home. The home, stops at the door and many years ago that was where it stopped and sometimes you would have a lawn and that would kind of be the extent of it, but now as you're blurring the boundary, you're having these walls that open up as an example and so you're not in a box anymore. You have more of a vast open space. So even if the box that you're in is small because you have it open or because you have these windows, it feels so much bigger. I think there's a huge advantage to that. Dan, when you practice, like, because you obviously do outdoor design, but you work with a lot of interior designers and architects and things like that, is this something that you take into account when you're planning the outdoor space? Is like making the indoor space feel bigger and like expanding that footprint?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love, working with a good design team, a great architect, a great interior designer, and really from the very beginning, right? From when they are starting to lay out the floor plan, because so much syncs up and all three of us are looking at it from a different perspective. So it's really nice to be all on that same page. Um, I think it's one of those things, it's, taking the material, making sure the materials you're using inside aren't fighting with what's happening outside. Like, that's why the relationship with the interior designer is so important, so that you're really talking about their plans for the interior and how we can sync that up for the exterior. And further to that, designing outside, you can't just design with your back to the house, right? And looking at the space you have. It's really seeing, where do I have a focal point window where they're spending all their time? This is where I want a focal point. So even if it's a time of year or a busier time for the client, they still have a view of their garden and they're still feel immersed in the garden, even if they're actually not in it.
Hmm.
I
And again,
also
it just,
love to go ahead.
no, 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 finish.
Okay, I was gonna say the other thing I like to do to sort of draw people into the space is not have the whole garden revealed, right? Like, to certainly have that wow moment, that they're seeing all the time. But maybe there's the beginning of something that it's like, wait a minute, what's going on over there? And it really draws you out into the space. I always find that very interesting.
Yeah. It's funny because I think that's something that I've noticed about your designs is that you have these, for lack of a better word, I'm gonna say, like, pathways. It's like there's this, like, you want to go down there. You want to see, like, what's happening in a bunch of different directions, which I think is obviously really successful because you don't just wanna be using one portion of the space. You do want all of it to be functional and all of it to have that kind of, like, wow factor or at least, a curiosity element to it, right?
And a reason to go there, right? Almost like your
Yeah.
interior rooms. There's the room, maybe you're curling up next to the fireplace in a chair with a book. And then there's the room you're entertaining in, right? We need to give function to these outdoor spaces so you have a reason to use it.
Yeah, and I think that goes, like, what we're seeing a lot, especially in urban centers, is that people might be moving to a condo where their indoor space is smaller, but maybe they have a massive terrace outside, or they have a rooftop patio, or they have, a really big outdoor space. And I think for a while, people really struggled to activate that space. They didn't know what to do with it. They had maybe some chairs and stuff out there, but they didn't know to treat it like it had walls, treat it like indoors. What are you going to do in this area? Like, what do you want to do here? Make sure that it's really obvious and have that same kind of like bubble space planning out for the outside.
Yeah, I think so much more is available now, not just because a lot of those spaces have weight limits, right? And so you can't have these big stone pots, right? Because you're container gardening essentially in those spaces, as well as your outdoor kitchens and your seating. But there's so many high quality, really, really nice looking planters and furniture that are lightweight. So you're able to design this whole other room outside and it functions how it needs to, but it also hits the mark on what your, insurance company allows.
Yeah, still staying within the rules, which is important.
That's right. But making it look like you did it.
Yes, yeah. It's I was just thinking as I was talking, I realized that this picture actually that we have on the screen like perfectly depicts what we're talking about. Inside you might have this smaller table that only fits four people, but just next to it you have a much larger dining area. And so you're able to entertain more people just by opening up that wall space, between the two. So, the last thing that I wanted to talk about before we do get more into the aesthetics, which we've already started to dabble in a little bit, is circadian rhythm alignment. So, circadian rhythm is also something that I'm hearing a lot of designers talk about, especially people who are a little bit more focused on the outdoors. But I think that alignment with indoor outdoor design will really help with this. So, again, I put in just like a really quick definition of what circadian rhythm is for anybody who hasn't heard it before, but it's basically your body's internal biological clock. And so it is primarily driven, your biological clock is primarily driven by light and darkness cues from your environment. So if you're in a dark space that doesn't have a window, you're throwing off your circadian rhythm. It's really important that you are allowing your body to connect with natural light and natural sunlight and the darkness so that you are allowing yourself to have that 24-hour rhythm. So it is important for mental and physical health. And a way that you can kind of do that is with like an example like this. You see these massive windows on both sides. So you're seeing the sunrise, you're seeing the sunset. And harnessing those natural light transitions throughout the day can help improve your sleep cycles, health for the occupants. I mean, there's like endless possibilities here. Dan, in a lot of your projects, I've noticed you also have a lot of really big windows. Is this something that you're finding designers in particular or architects are prioritizing? Have you heard a lot about this? Can you tell us anything else about it?
I think it's one of those things that even unintentionally, you're sort of craving it without knowing why or the definition,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
so clients might describe just what you said without knowing the definition or why they're wanting it, right? But um and even in the evenings, they want it to sort of when we do landscape lighting, right? They want to be able to see their garden, but I always make sure it's not like lit up like an airport. We're not trying to make it daylight. We're trying to make an evening setting, right? So you can see the garden, so the garden still functions, but so it feels like evening. We're not blowing loges out with a bunch of can lights. It's much softer. And
Yeah.
there's so many great lighting options, even now going into table lamps and floor lamps that you can use and keep outside all the time that I think gives that sort of evening glow. And then, it all sort of goes dark and quiet. So there is that rhythm.
Yeah. And it's the circadian rhythm, obviously, like we're talking about our clients, but not lighting up the outdoor space is also, if you do light up the outdoor space, you're affecting the circadian rhythm of any of the animals that live in that environment and the insects that live in that environment. So just being conscious of how light can really affect these sleep cycles, which has obviously we know that sleep has an effect on everybody and everything. It's good to be conscious of this. I'm glad that it's something that we're focusing on more and more.
Definitely. And that is why we don't just like keep the lights on all night, right? It is
Hmm.
about the environment, sort of sleeping as
Yeah.
well, because we do want things like butterflies and ladybugs and fireflies coming into the garden and having it be a
Yeah.
habitat.
Absolutely. The birds and the bees and the butterflies, right? Those are the three Bs that you want in every outdoor design, essentially.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. We've talked about all of the, mental, physical wellness aspects of it and beyond the aesthetics, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. So, invisible thresholds. This is obviously a huge part of indoor outdoor design. This is what we're seeing more and more of. Walls like this are just completely opening up. So, how do we achieve that? There's different ways. The first one is flush flooring and continuous tracks. And this isn't necessarily the material that we're talking about here. Flush flooring, if you see in the image, it has two different flooring levels, but flooring finishes, but they're at the same level. And so it feels a little bit more continuous. Is this what you're seeing mostly in your designs, Dan? I know that there's obviously like a material continuation trend that we're seeing quite a bit as well, but there's just so many different options for indoors and outdoors that I feel like we're not quite there yet where we're bringing all of the outdoor materials indoors necessarily. So is this kind of what you see more often than others?
I think, yes, certainly bridging the materials. I think a situation like this, it certainly depends on your location, right?
Mm,
If you're on a coast, if you're in California, like this is totally doable. You would not do this in Texas, right? Your house would be full of mosquitoes. It would be so hot. But you can achieve it even if the whole wall doesn't open up. And I mean, certainly this is ideal, right? You have no gap there. But there's a way to do it even without having that look, or even if you have a more traditional home, right? Where you can get that feeling of everything flowing. And I do think floor materials is an excellent way to do that. And also, bringing the colors that you have. Do you have a neutral palette? Well, let's not do a real colorful garden outside. Let's do kind of a green and white garden. Or do you have a really punchy interior and that's your jam? Okay, let's get some fun punchy umbrellas and tie that together. And I think it helps for it not to feel like a sudden drop and two
yeah.
totally different design aesthetics happen indoors and out.
Yeah, it's the abrupt change that we're looking to
Right.
really stop, like have the same intention and color palette and everything, which we do get into a little bit later. I think obviously like flooring tracks and opening doors, like you said, not everybody has that capability. Here's another example where you achieve that just with windows instead. And again, in Texas, maybe not because you would be in an aquarium.
Now,
You
well,
might cook.
they're true, but they're really paying attention to where your windows are. Maybe it's not on
Hmm.
the west side of the house, you do something like this, but on the east or north, doing transoms, doing um, you know, sort of structureless corners, right? Where the windows come together at the corner and there's no beam at the corner, which I mean is it's sort of
Beautiful.
mesmerizing, right? But I
Yeah.
think having um the light really, I mean, look, you feel like you're sitting in an outdoor room in that room. And so, yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, just with glass and also with the glass now, that really keeps the heat or cold out, you're
Mhm.
able to do that a lot more.
Yeah, we've come a long way. In the past, this would be so cold or so hot, but really technology
Correct.
has caught up, and that's been
Yes,
a huge factor. Yeah.
absolutely.
And then the last one, we did talk about this a little bit, but using the same materials, like carrying the same flooring, carrying the same ceiling treatment, like anything that you can do that is drawing your eye outside and making it feel like one continuous space helps with the transition and just also helps to make the indoor and the outdoor space just feel like more vast and cohesive. Um, I will put in a little specific outdoor kitchen note here as well that if you are designing an outdoor kitchen also in your outdoor space that is close to your indoor kitchen, use that same principle. Use the same countertop materials or something that has a similar finish. Use the same colors on the cabinets. If you want something different or a statement, then of course do that. But by using those similar tones and kind of like drawing the eye out, you're making it look like you have one really big kitchen when maybe you have those two. So don't overthink it. You have a beautiful design inside. A lot of the times the outside is done after the inside, unfortunately for us, but we totally understand that this is our reality. And so you already have all of the design that you love within your home. Use the same elements that you love outside too, right?
Yeah, actually, I think another thing that Kalamazoo and Urban Bonfire do really well is I mean, I'm a big fan of your products and incorporating them in my designs, but I think the bigger thing for me is that y'all aren't just like, here are cabinet options, here are appliance options. When we work with y'all to come up with the design, you're very into, is there a brick wall inside the home? Is there stone? Is there wood? And you're helping us incorporate those into the elevations of the kitchens and then setting your cabinets within. And I love that relationship of really, okay, what can we cover up? What can we not cover up? Right? What needs to be more exposed? But it really helps translate the outdoor kitchen, not just with what's happening with the interiors, but not making it like this appendage that got slammed in because you needed a grill. It really feels like part of the architecture of the home itself, which I think is so important.
Well, thank you for that. We do try like the whole ethos of urban bonfire as an example is it's your kitchen outdoors. It's not your outdoor kitchen. And we want you to think of it as the same way that you would think of your indoor kitchen. And I think we've done a good job of choosing different materials. Like even our standard finishes are we do try to make them I hate the word trend, but you know, of the moment, I suppose. So I suppose trend is the word. But we want it to fit with the aesthetics of what's happening on the inside. And I think everything that we choose is quite timeless. And I think timeless design right now is a bit of a trend, which is amazing. I'm so happy to see that. But I feel like in the past there was like colors for outdoor furniture and colors for indoor furniture. But that I think is blurring as well. Not just the threshold, but the materials and everything else that you use indoors and
Well,
outdoors
and the
and the color
fabrics, right?
palettes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the fabrics have come so far in
So far.
exteriors. The big fabric lines are now have amazing outdoor fabrics. And so we can really work with the interior designers when they're pulling the fabrics from the interiors, the same lines Schumacher and Tebow and all of these others are sister parish. Like, you would never think of those for outdoor furniture lines. And now they have
Yeah.
them and they're really, really changing the way we can sort of decorate, right? Outside as well.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I feel like for such a long time in the past, when you thought of outdoor cushions, it would have like some sort of big leaf pattern on it, or it would be, a very bold turquoise color, or and it was a bit of a cliche a little bit when you were choosing outdoor fabrics and things, but we're getting those softer desert tones and those kind of like more developed patterns, I would say now. I'm really, really happy to see that. And that helps so much with the cohesion between the indoor and the outdoor.
Definitely. Definitely agree.
Good changes are happening. So
That's
this
right.
is a good segue actually, because the next section is core design pillars. And so you do want to be using those color palettes and texture palettes and everything that you have indoors. You do want to be bringing that outdoor. sorry, as well. Dan, I loved this image that you provided us, and I thought it was a nice one to include in here because, like, you do have a lot of the neutral tones, but then you have those like punchy color palettes. So I assume that this is mimicking something that's happening inside as well. The client might
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of Yeah, it's kind of what I was talking about earlier, right? This home, it's fun inside. And so we were like, let's have some great pagoda umbrellas and, the black and white awnings, and then have the flowers also represent. We're not going to have orange flowers out there. They don't relate to anything. And it's almost like I sort of want the feeling that you just see it and it's like, "Oh, of course that's supposed to be there." Like, I never would have come up with it, but yeah, that's what it should
that makes
be.
sense.
And you can sort of see here, we've got our focal point straight out, but you can see it continues. That makes you wanna walk through that doorway. And, this leads straight into the bar, so it's heavy entertainment traffic. And it's just kind of fun. It's meant to be, it's not an enormous space. There's not a great view, right? It's in the city. And so we've sort of created our screen with our pleach trees and um I'm always like, don't be afraid to just embrace the size of your space. If it's a small space, make it look like a fabulous courtyard. We were like, the design intent here was for it to be like a boutique hotel in Palm Beach, right? And, just create something that fits the space then rather than trying to force something that's not, right?
Yeah, work with what you have. I mean, that's the easiest or like most simple design advice. Like, don't try to
And
force
then you're not
something,
fighting it.
like you said.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
you've got this footprint. You don't have an amazing view, but you can still create something beautiful and amazing.
Really dynamic. Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. You can't even tell that this is a small space because it does still have so much going on in it. And it sounds like you very much prioritize what was important to the client, which is seems to be maybe entertaining and being able to have
yes.
people over and having this space where people can kind of gather and connect.
And I think the other thing that makes, that carries the indoors and out, we don't really push our furniture to the four walls, right? You have floating
Mm,
sofas with tables behind them and things. So I think outside, I love to think a little beyond just having bed lines around the property lines, right? Like, let's layer it in. Let's do something maybe a little more interesting and unconventional. I think that's always what draws people and gets the wow moment, the attention is the unexpected.
yeah, it's thinking outside of I guess, yeah, the expected is exactly what you were saying, and also it allows the person to see the exact purpose of that space, right? By like adding maybe a planter bed or something in between of what it would otherwise be a massively open space, then all of a sudden you have two spaces, and maybe that's the dining room and the outdoor kitchen or the bocce court or anything like that. But being able to like play with it and add these elements in also helps you so that it's not quite so vast, which can be a little bit overwhelming too.
Absolutely. And we want you think about if you go to a resort, yes, there's the big open pool, but what do you gravitate toward? It's like the little cozy corner that's, surrounded by
Yes.
plantings and it's got an umbrella and a few chairs. We want the view of the big open, but we still want those cozy little moments that you're sort of wrapped up. So I always try and
Yeah.
create those too.
And that's like to bring it to that indoor outdoor living. You started this webinar by saying indoors, you have these areas where people want to cozy up and read. And it's maybe a smaller area. And then you have the like more big open area that's for the entertaining. And then you said the exact same thing for the outdoor. I don't even know if you meant to do that, but it was just like such
I
a
didn't mean to
perfect
do
full
that.
circle
Let's go
moment.
with yes. Let's say
Yes,
yes.
of
I meant
course.
to
We
close
planned
that
this out.
circle. All right. Right.
I think spatial flow, furniture alignment, like taking the kind of the footprint or the flow of the indoor space and using that outdoors as well, obviously really helps. And I think, again, just helps people to think of what each space is going to be used for. And one thing I'll say in regard to this, because I think we've spoken about it kind of when we were talking about other topics, but like the flow to me is so important especially when you're designing an outdoor kitchen, especially if that kitchen is dependent on the indoor kitchen. If somebody's doing all of their prep and everything inside and just mostly cooking outside, which is what we call a satellite kitchen, you need to have a very obvious path for them to be able to go back and forth. And they don't need to be dodging people or dodging things or walking around or having to detour. You want that to be really intentional and have a really good, obvious flow for that. I think it just like it makes it so much more functional for the client. And it seems so simple, but yet I think it's something that's often overlooked because you're trying to fill in the spaces. You're not thinking, well, they're going to be walking from there to there with raw meat or, something that just came off a barbecue that's really hot. And you don't want them to be spilling that or dripping that on anybody. So I think that's my biggest takeaway in the outdoor kitchen part. Is there anything that you do like when you are looking to design an outdoor space, if it's an add-on or if it's like just a reno of the outdoor, do you go indoors and kind of see like how they have everything set up? Do you use that as
Always,
inspiration?
always. And talk to them about what works, what doesn't, what they're lacking, what they're needing. I think it's also people have such vast differences in how they use an outdoor kitchen. And it's
Hmm.
understanding, do I have someone who they and their partner or whatever want to really cook outside all the time? Like they need a pizza oven and they want a smoker and they want a grill. And they're really going to be out there smoking meat for hours and hours and hours. And they need a TV close and they need a place to sit, right?
Yeah.
Versus someone who has a great entertainment space but hates to cook and the brother-in-law just needs a place to grill burgers, right? Like what are your needs? Because you c you never wanna create this beautiful, enormous kitchen for someone who's like, "We do grilled chicken twice a month out here," right? It's like
Yeah.
but the person who's gonna be prepping out there and wants a side burner, and they're really, like, using this not as a satellite kitchen, but as a second kitchen all on its own,
Hmm.
you've got to make sure not just to have the appliances, but you've got to have prep space. You've got to have a spot to put that platter, right? To put the spatula, to have room outside of just the cooking and also to serve. Um, so I think it's really important to really sit down with the client and talk about the function of the space for them and how it is either going to complement what they've done inside, um, or be its own thing, or like I said, solve some issues that they're having inside. Uh, how can we correct that by giving them something that they can use on the exterior?
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's so important. It's like, what do you love about your home? What do you wish your home could do? How can we achieve that for you? Is that something that we can do outdoors? Maybe you have a massive table outside so that when you're hosting your entire family, everybody can come over and it's always an outdoor meal. But inside, you're just a family of four. And so you don't need a massive table. Yeah. I think I always say this, but understanding the needs of your clients and like the lifestyle of your clients is really important too. Just like how many people are they going to cook for on a regular basis? How many people do they cook for? That's going to determine how big of a grill you're going to get. That's going to determine how many people are sitting at the table. That's going to determine if you want, a formal dining room or if you can just have in kitchen seating where you're adding some stools to the back of the island that has an overhang. And it all starts just by asking questions to your client, which I think everybody on this call does know, but it's something that I just really like to stress because it's so important to know your client inside and out. Because the most beautiful design, if it's not functional for their lifestyle, it's not a good design for them.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, I can design a space a number of ways, right? And rather than me just picking one out of the sky, like that's where the client comes in. And it's like, look, I'm going to give you something you want that you wouldn't be able to create for yourself. But when it's finished, you're going to be thinking, this is exactly what I wanted. I didn't realize it, but this is exactly what I wanted. And that's always the goal.
Yeah, a little bit of mind reading in design, I think.
Always. We all need a minor in psychology. I am convinced.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you talked about this a little bit before as well, but I do want to kind of come back to it. It's the sight lines and the focal points. So the way that you said it was you're not designing with your back to the house, right? You're focusing on what they're going to see when they look out the window. I love this image because obviously it's an urban bonfire outdoor kitchen, which is really
Yeah,
nice to see when they're working from
lovely.
their indoor kitchen. But it's sight lines are something that's so important. So another thing that I put in here is like when you're planning an outdoor kitchen, don't have the back of the grill to a window because it's not a nice sight line, especially if it's a window that is, seen all the time, like this one that's behind a sink, or that's maybe in a bedroom and it's the first thing that you see when you wake up. If it's just a side window that nobody looks out over, it's really high or things like that, then you can think about it. But you don't you anytime that somebody looks out a window, you want them to see something beautiful. It is the artwork. Nature is the artwork, right?
That's right. For sure. For sure. And I think too, this is sort of more of a functional thing. Definitely, you don't want the back of an appliance to a focal point window. Um, in a different way, you also don't you want to try and avoid having the smoker or the pizza oven or the grill backing up to like the brick or the stucco or the stone of the house because it's going to smoke, right? It's going to be like if your fireplace doesn't draft properly and the smoke's coming up the front. And look, we've gotten into, small spaces where that's the only option. And so, if we have a vent hood above, treat it like an interior space. Maybe use a darker countertop, in Decton or soapstone or something like that. And then do a great pattern behind the grill that that soapstone or that Decton can smoke up, but it's this great deep color. So you're not noticing, right? Because nothing's
Yeah.
more frustrating. It's like we've got this great setup and it looks like it's not clean.
Yeah, which does happen a lot with outdoor cooking because it's saucy. You're using so many sauces and oils and things, and all of those oil vapors are coming out with the smoke, and a lot of that is behind. And so the wall behind a barbecue, as an example, is often quite greasy, for a lack of a better word. And so you need to be able to plan either to be able to clean that very frequently, or like you said, to kind of have something that's going to disguise that so that you're not seeing it as much as you would if it was like a white stucco wall, as an example.
Correct. Right. Even if it's more traditional, so you don't want a slab or, bring tile in, right? And trim it out because, tile's not going to be porous the way stucco or brick or stone would be porous to soak up that, and not difficult to clean. And look, that's aesthetic and functional, right? It's going to look great, but it's also not a beating. You're not having to repaint the side of your house.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of the I don't think it's any secret that we have an amazing relationship with Cosentino, and specifically the Decton material. Urban Bonfire has a cabinetry line with it. And I think that's just one of
So
the
pretty.
best things about that particular material is like put it behind. It doesn't matter. It'll be so easy to clean. It's not going to stain. You don't have to worry about it. And I think
Yeah. Even
just
the
that we
lighter
have so many.
colors, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And just that we have so many more options. Like we talked about technology and just how far the kind of like tech side of things, but also that applies to all of the materials and surfaces that we're seeing outdoors as well. It's not just those porous natural materials that you have to seal or you have to maintain. It's, we're coming. We've got lots of options now, or certainly
Yeah.
more
It's
options.
true. It's true.
We're getting there. Bridging the gap. So this is our fourth topic. We have about 20 minutes left, so I'll make sure that we stay on track here. Something that I talk about a lot is some sort of overhead structure. I think it's so important in outdoor designs because it allows you to have obviously shelter. So if your clients do want to use it every day, rain or shine, put a roof over it. And then make sure that you have the right ventilation requirements, make sure that the roofing is not combustible. There are all kinds, especially if you have a kitchen, there are all kinds of things that you need to consider. But with some sort of roof structure like you have here, it just allows you to use the space more often, right? Like that's one of the huge advantages. It also gives you something to affix other things to. So if you have heating or cooling or lighting or anything, it's so hard to put that somewhere outdoors because you have these different posts and things. But if you have some sort of overhead structure, then you can hide even audio, like you can have speakers in those in that ceiling and things like that. Um, I also personally like what you've done here is that it creates this little seating space, right? So it delineates the space. So like this is obviously where the seating space is, and you have your plants and everything else around it. But are you a fan of the overhead structure? Is there one in particular that you like to use?
Yeah, I mean, I am. The What I really love to do actually, and that's what we've done in this case. I mean, you can see behind these chairs that wall of glass, and that's the primary suite, and the same flooring runs through it. So it's that. But off to the left, that's a covered loggia where their outdoor kitchen is and their fireplace. And so I like often for there to be this transition where it's not just completely covered, right, loggia and then the backyard. It's nice here for there to be an in between where it's covered but
Hmm.
not totally covered, right? So we're cutting the sun a little bit, but you're still getting some great breeze through there. And it creates, you can see how the landscape just cozies right up around it. And it gives you that more intimate space because we have seating for 12 around the fireplace in the loggia. Well, if it's in this case, the mom and the dad at the end of the day want to have a glass of wine and just relax, it's not cozy to be in a seating group of 12. So we've got this great little cozy spot outside of their primary suite that's their spot and that's where they end the day. And I love creating those little moments.
Yeah, I love that. It's like you said, if you're in a big room and there's just two of you, it feels not quite as welcoming as if you have these smaller spaces. I think another great thing, like obviously I talked about using the roof structure, but it's also a great transition between the indoor and the outdoor that allows your eyes to adjust, that allows you to kind of continue some of those materials. Like there's just a lot of advantages to that. This was something I learned in the first webinar that I did this year was about aging in place, and I had like a physical therapist on who was saying, you don't want to have the indoor fully open outdoor, and then the person just walks out and they're blinded. When they walk out, they can't see, as an example. And so having these kind of spaces or a louvered pergola or even some sort of arbor or anything, just like you said, kind of like dims that light and allows
Just
them to have
cuts it
a
just enough. I
yeah,
think the
yeah.
other opportunity it gives us, I mean, I work in a lot of areas that are very humid. You could have the same issue if it's very dry, right? And it was like it used to just be these big ceiling fans, right? Which,
Hmm.
you know, designers don't like to use them inside for a reason. They're just not that attractive. And so a lot of times what we're doing is putting fans up in the corners of a loggia or a pergola. It does two things. First of all, it allows you to have a great lantern over your seating area or over your
Mm,
table. Again, bringing that indoor out and making it feel like a room. Also, those fans are so much more effective because think what cools you down like 10 to 15 degrees. It's a cross breeze. So if you got in those spaces, not still air, but the air is blowing across the space, it's pushing mosquitoes out and flies out, right? But it's also just creating a more relaxed environment. And it's something so easy to wire that it's like a nothing thing, but I love that solution. That's all I love. And we've talked about a lot about this, like functional solutions that also end up being more aesthetically pleasing. And I
yes.
love when you can make that happen.
Yeah, that's one of the best feelings I think in design is like, well, this is the perfect answer and it looks the best. So it's a win-win.
Exactly, and I think, like, what you're saying, that's sort of the cooling and, look, if we're gonna do a project in Arizona, obviously, it's drier, so you might have misters involved, right? I wouldn't be
Mm,
doing that in Florida, right? Because you've already got the humidity, you don't need the misters,
yeah,
but also, like you were saying, Ashley, heaters, lighting, cooling, all of these things, those structures, even if it's just a pergola, can house those elements and really extend your use of it.
exactly. It's extending the what do we call them? The shoulder seasons, I think is so
Yes,
it's like obviously
that's right.
summer is the time that everybody is outside in Montreal. Other places it's different, but it's allowing you to come out earlier in the spring and stay out later in the fall by adding some of these elements that make it a little bit more comfortable.
That's
This
right.
is a light over the table to answer Lynette's question. um,
It's so great.
and then yeah, it's really neat. I've never seen one like this in the outdoor space, but this was a really beautiful project, obviously, that we worked on. Um, and then creating these zones too, right? So like this also has an overhead structure, and this is obviously where the kitchen and the dining room are outdoors, and I think that that really helps. And this goes back to kind of what we were saying at the beginning too, is that in outdoors you have this vast space, but you need to really determine how each of those areas are going to be used and you want it to all be functional. And I think treating it like rooms really helps because I think otherwise it can feel quite overwhelming when you're just looking at this like really big empty slate and it's like, well, what am I going to do with all of this space? But
Well,
then you add in
like you said
different
earlier,
ideas.
treating it like a bubble diagram, right? Like you
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
interior, like, what do we need? Like, okay, let's start mapping it out. And do we want a bigger space to entertain a lot? But then we also want it where it can be 4 to 6, and that can work too. So, some of these flex ideas. But this is, I mean, obviously very beautiful, goes without saying.
Yeah. Yeah. We're pretty lucky that we get to work on some pretty fantastic projects.
Yeah.
Transitional greenery. Dan, I think this is something that you actually do really well. I feel like in every one of your projects, like if there's a window, there's basically greenery outside of it. And so you are doing that, like you're bringing in the outdoors in and vice versa. And so it's not such, again, we're trying to get rid of that like jar when you walk between indoor and outdoor of like, oh, well, this is really different from the space that I was just in. Because if you're constantly seeing the greenery, then it's not surprising when you like walk out into it, right? Is that what you're trying to
That's
achieve by
right.
doing this? Is this yeah.
Yeah, I think also it was always people were like, I don't want the bushes growing up in front of the windows. Okay, I get you don't want a 6 foot tall hedge touching the glass. But
Yes.
my thing is, it's part of that layering, right? So if you've got low windows, I mean, I'm not mad at a mass planting of white hydrangeas in front of that, that are going to come up a couple feet. You're seeing over them. They're not blocking, but they're sort of adding to that immediate experience. And it's really almost like they're coming indoors. It's this bouquet right out your window. And I think it's that, again, that idea of not just pushing everything to the fence line, but really getting something that's drawing you out and making you feel a part of the garden, even if you aren't actually in it.
Mhm. And that goes the other way too, right? Like that's why we bring plants inside is because we want to feel nature and everything inside. And so
That's right.
use that same principle. And it's yeah,
That's right.
drawing that in and that cohesiveness. This is our
Mhm.
last topic. So we do have about 9 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we get to any questions. So as we go through these last slides, please feel free to put any questions into the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to them, either if it's about what we're talking about or anything else that you want to discuss. But please don't be shy. We do encourage questions. We want to see it. So, four season performance, again, for you and I, this means something totally different. And for me, our summers are really hot, our winters are really cold and covered in snow. And so, what the needs of that space is vastly different compared to, I mean, Dallas as an example, California is another one. Like so many different climates within North America. And so something that we've talked about a lot is that climate control. And misting was one of the things that came up here as well, which I think is something that, I mean, you see in parks all the time. You see in kind of more public areas all the time, but it's not something that has been seen in residential design until more recently. Is that what you would say, Dan? Or is this something that's always been around that I just haven't been
Yeah.
aware of?
No, I mean, look, I grew up in Arizona, and so it was kind of thing more, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think certainly more in restaurants, right? And I think it also depends on the part of the country. Like I said, if you're in a humid environment, misting isn't helping you, right? This is not what you want.
Yes.
It's like, but if you're in drier areas, I mean, it's everything to have that. And
Mhm.
yeah, you would, I don't know, it felt like more of a resort or um, restaurant kind of situation rather than at home. And I think as we're seeing with all these other things we've explored is taking those things, they don't have to be just for that. Let's bring that into the residence.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people are getting inspiration from resorts. I spoken with another designer about this, and it's like it's obviously not at the same scale, but like why not? If there was something that you loved and that was something that you did every single day that you would love to bring home, then bring it home, add it into your home if you have the means. Um, for we talked about this a little bit too, and this is not my forte. And so, Dan, if you want to kind of add anything here, but thermal efficiency and smart glass, like you did mention some of these properties before. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
I mean, it's I'm not an expert in this, right? I leave that to the architects and the builders. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's huge because you can see it in this home, especially. That was very, very important because there's no overhang over the windows.
Mm.
Um, so that becomes a big part of it. Okay, and talk about everything I've been saying. Don't be afraid to have plants in the middle of the yard by the house. This space is actually very large. And so what we've done, actually, they have dogs that love to run and jump. And so that was part of the design criteria. So we created all these low stone walls. So it's literally a racetrack for the dogs. So it was like make a racetrack for the dogs without making it look like a racetrack for the dogs. So here's what
I
I
love
came up
that so
with.
much.
But, it's kind of fun, right? And we make this feel like when you're in those interior rooms, because of those large scale windows, you are able to feel a part of the garden. And it goes way back from here. And there's a large pool area and an outdoor kitchen. But the entire experience is extended. And because of those efficient windows, it still makes it pleasant, right? It's not you're not getting all the glare, you're not getting the cold in the winter and the heat in the summer, and it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, just to talk about how far materials have come, just like know what the options are, know what you're working with. And even if you're designing the outdoor space, I think it's still good to have an understanding because maybe, if they aren't as efficient or if it's going to be helpful to have some sort of like overhang or structure over some of these windows, then this is something that's obviously really good to know and that you can incorporate into the design.
Well, you
Know
saw
what you're
on the
working
other
with.
one where we had the black and stripe, white stripe dotting, that was facing south, and we have those big glass doors, right? And there's windows on the side, it's almost like a little atrium. So, yeah, the black and white stripe was fun, but it was also really necessary because otherwise that sun coming in was just beating. So, it's the pretty stuff isn't always just pretty. Sometimes it's really
Pretty
serving a
unfunctional.
purpose. Yeah, yeah.
This is what we're yeah, everything that we're kind of saying today is it's really alluding to that. And then finally, I think weather resistant luxury is something that I've been hearing more and more about. We're seeing panels on this, like different companies are talking about this. And I think it's amazing. It's what we've said, like we're seeing a huge rise in textiles and different types of materials that you can use outdoors, different treated woods or even like composite woods or like faux woods that are still of really beautiful quality, and still have that really like nice kind of warm feel to them. And to me, one of the most important things that I think people, I'm going to say take for granted is UV rays are so intense. Like if it is not a UV stable material, it will deteriorate. Like there's no question about it. And that doesn't matter what environment you're in. So some will be quicker than others, but what I like to think of, or like as a general rule of thumb, if I'm designing something in a specific environment, I try to say, what is the harshest part of that environment? Like, is it because there's salt water? Is it because it's full sun? Is like UV rays? Is it humidity? Is it snow? Is it rain? Like, what is the harshest element and design for that element? Because then everything else is like easy peasy in comparison, you
Very
know?
fun. And salt, I think, is one of the worst that I find
Yeah.
because it's so corrosive. and not
Absolutely.
only into materials, but plant materials. So if you're designing on a coast, I mean, you've really got to get that right. Or you can have this beautiful environment that really within a couple years can be destroyed, right? And that's not even hurricane
Mhm.
destroyed. It's literally just the salt.
Yeah, just sitting still. This wasn't a slide, and I don't think we touched on it, but it was like the materials, locally sourced materials. Like that is
Hmm.
so advantageous as well because this is something that can survive in this environment, and so it makes sense to use it in that. So that's certainly a rule of thumb that I try to follow as much as I can. Um,
Also tends to tie in with the architecture, right? And everything else you're
yes.
creating.
Yeah, this is a big thing when I do presentations. A lot of what I say is that, and I learned this from somebody else. This isn't something that I came up with, but it has to fit with the existing architecture, the existing landscape, and the client's lifestyle. Like these are the three most important things of any, I'm going to say outdoor design, um, because if it doesn't fit one of those, then it's not as successful as it could be, essentially. But you always have to take into account what's already there, and nature was there first. And so I think that's always an important starting point, at least, or it should be a starting point for any outdoor design.
Absolutely.
Um, that's it. So, I mean, the conclusion, obviously, it's a summary of everything that we've discussed, but wellness is a huge priority. Understand what wellness means to your client and make sure that you're incorporating those wellness elements that means the most to them. We talked about this. If you don't have a large outdoor space, it doesn't matter. Like design any outdoor space to fit the need of the client and achieve what they're looking for. You can prioritize views, you can have strategic placement of plantings, you can have, windows and doors and everything that open up that just make a space feel so much bigger than what it is. Use the same core design pillars from inside. It's just different materials, but a lot of the same ideas and everything do float out to the outdoors, and transitions are important. Do them right. This was the last one that I wanted to focus on because it's that space that makes the big difference so that you're not walking out and looking back and being like, wait a minute, is this the same house? Like, did I just walk through a portal or
Yeah.
something? Happened here. Do
Yes.
you have any closing remarks, Dan?
No, just thank y'all for joining us. This was great. A lot of fun.